For the past few months, I've been working on a podcast called Event Stars to help people in the events industry, and I've had some really fantastic opportunities to interview some superb people from the industry and beyond. But like many things at the moment, now is not the time to launch it. Now is the time where we need to come together and support each other for what is going to be truly difficult times ahead. So I've been switching it up a little bit while my business is pretty much at zero, and decided to do a podcast that can help people cut through the noise and help businesses hopefully grow and learn during this period. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that something good can come from it. If you've got any suggestions, then feel free to get in touch. Hello and welcome to another episode of Opportunity in Isolation. In this episode, I interview Melinda Livsey, who is a brand strategist and online educator based in sunny Southern California. She successfully went from charging $0 an hour to $10,000 for brand strategy in less than a year by helping her clients win the hearts of their ideal customers. She's been featured on online education platforms and blogs such as The Future, The Logo, Creative, and The Design Life, as well as podcasts such as Let's Talk Branding, The Logo Geek, and the Honest Designers podcast, to name just a few. It was a really insightful episode for me, especially as I'm looking at how we can focus more on storytelling with our events brands, and we spoke about how we should think about branding, the difference between branding and marketing, and why you should actually get clients to pay you for pitching. So, as always, enjoy and happy listening. Melinda, first of all, thank you so much for joining me today on my podcast, and welcome to Opportunity in Isolation. Before we get started, I know you're over on the West Coast in California. Tell me a little bit, as we sit here on August the 3rd, about the situation in the US and in California in particular, in relation to COVID, and I guess how everyone's getting on over there.
Yeah, well, last I heard, because I look at the news every so often and get updates, but where I'm at in California is the worst in the US right now. So the numbers are really climbing. I know there were a couple other states that were also high up on that list, but I know we are. And people aren't going back to school. So they're doing remote school coming up soon. A lot of businesses, it's been back and forth with opening, shutting, opening. So I think the majority of them are shut from what I know, but things change so fast. I don't even know what's going on. So is there a statewide lockdown, or is it just kind of be careful, wear a mask, and just stay away from people when you can? I think it's that, as well as shut down of some businesses too.
Okay.
From what I know.
Okay. And how have you approached these last few months being a brand strategist?
Yeah, the crazy part for me is that business hasn't really slowed down much. And I don't know, I'm trying to figure out why and what it is that is going on, that a lot of my circle hasn't been too affected. Some of us have, but for the most part, the businesses that we're working with are looking to, they either had money in the bank already, and so they were ready to weather a storm like this, or they're ready to pivot. And they see that the world is changing, then that they're going to have to do something fast. And if they don't do it, then they're going to be completely out of business. So there's that. And then I also have an education side where I do teach designers, if they're interested in being brand strategists, how to do that and how to make that transition, because that's an online learning platform. People now are at home and they have more time. And so I've had probably the same amount of students I would have if this didn't happen. I think I just had a couple drop out because I launched my course the same week that COVID came in March for us. So I haven't seen a huge downturn in business, but I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones, though.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, I've got so many questions to sort of follow up on what you've just spoken about, but let's kind of look back a little bit at the fact that you started as a designer, and what made you pivot from being a designer to now, I guess, branding yourself as a brand strategist?
Yeah. I was a designer for, I want to say 8 or 9 years. And I had a frustrating time as a designer. And I didn't realize that most of the time it was because I didn't know how to get the direction I needed. I didn't know what goal we were trying to accomplish. I got feedback from clients like, I'll know it when I see it. And things like, just make it look good. And I thought, I was so frustrated as a designer because I thought there has to be more than this. There has to be more than just making something look good. There has to be a purpose behind it. So when I got introduced to the idea of branding and brand strategy and what goes into that, I realized that that was my key to getting the purpose of a business. And therefore all of the design that would be created after that would have purpose behind it. And I think that's what I was really craving, was that designing with a purpose, designing with a goal in mind, not just being told to, like an analogy would be to go dig a ditch and then go fill it back up. It just felt so pointless in most of the things that I was doing. And so that's what happened when I learned about brand strategy. I realized there's a whole other world out here that will make what I do have meaning. And I wanted that.
I mean, I've always thought that designing, like you said, must be a very difficult job because it's so subjective. And the fact that, you know, if I'm getting a logo design, for example, what I would do is I would either like it or dislike it and then try and feed back to the designer. And then I might go and show a bunch of friends and ask them what they think. And then they'll all have a different bunch of opinions. And I'll go back to the designer again. And there's that back and forth that goes on for a long, long time. It's not like, for example, being an accountant, your job's either done or it's not done. So, I mean, at that time, because there are still obviously a lot of designers out there, what were some of the steps that you took so that you could alleviate those issues?
Yeah, I first learned what brand strategy was. And at the same time, I was learning how to have more of a consultant mindset, because previously I was just the order taker who got a list of commands from the client, or I was working in-house as well, or from my supervisor, and said, just do this. And there was no reason behind it. There was nothing. It was just directions, like make the logo red because I like that color. That was it. And I was just the order taker. And so I had to learn how to approach an engagement with a client where I actually say, I ask, why are we even doing this? Is this going to have a big impact on your business? And if so, what is the impact it's going to make? How will we know it's going to be successful? How are we going to measure success? Because I don't want to go into a project and then not know if it worked or not. So I was learning how to ask those types of questions. And at the same time, I learned the process of brand strategy, how to do brand strategy. And I practiced on a few clients that I had known and some other people that I met, a family member that had a business, and practiced brand strategy in the process on them. And then as I got more comfortable with it, I started charging for it. But I think the biggest thing for me was switching from the order taker mindset into the consultant mindset.
Yeah. And before we go into that order taker to the consultant, how would you define brand strategy?
Yeah, I always go back to Marty Neumeier's definition of it's not what you say it is, it's what they say it is, and they being the customers. So what's the gut feeling that people have about your business? That's what a brand would be. You could also describe it as the personality or the reputation that you have. So it's this thing that lives, that it's not necessarily tangible. Now there are brand assets, and there are things like a logo and a color palette and an identity that will show and display the personality and the reputation. But really the brand lives in the hearts and the minds of the customer.
And what are some of the kind of steps that you take when you're working with a customer to try and get to that brand strategy and identity?
Yeah, well, what happens is we end up sitting down with the key decision makers in the business. That typically involves the founder. If it's a nonprofit and they have a board of directors, it might be a little bit different. But ideally, it would be the founder and any decision makers for the brand will be in the room. Usually, the C-suite, which is the CFO, the CMO, the CEO, and we would talk about, why is this business even in existence? Why does it matter to people? Who are you serving? Who was it created for? Who are those people? And we uncover things about the business and the story, the DNA of why this business exists. And we go way as far back as we possibly can. Sometimes it goes back to the founder's childhood and something that happened to them, or an event that happens that triggers this feeling of purpose, that they want to do something in the world. They want to change the world in a certain way. And we go back to that origin story and we talk about that. So we uncover all the things that make that business and what's unique about it. And then we go over all the things that are unique about the ideal customer, or we call it the super fan. So that one person, if you could just attract this one type of person, usually it's the mindset that this person has. If you attract them, that would be your ideal person that you would love all of your customers to be. And then we play matchmaker, where we try to make the brand attractive and bring all those qualities the ideal customer would love about them to the surface, and then bridge the gap between the two. So I like Yo Santosa. She's a brand identity designer here in LA, and she talks about branding being like matchmaking, that you're really creating this emotional connection between a business and their customers.
So when we talk about matchmaking and the brand matching the customer, the bit in between, I guess, would be marketing. Would it be correct? Or would it just be the customer suddenly, you're trying to say the customer would suddenly have an affinity with, say, the logo or the design or their social media page?
Yeah, it's actually every single touch point the customer is going to have with the brand. So that's going to go everywhere from marketing, if you do any advertising, the relationship. So let's say once you give your email over to someone, some business, and they start sending you emails, that's a relationship that they're building with you. If you watch any of their videos, so any content marketing, Instagram posts, any of that is a touch point. Customer service is also in that. Emails that you would get, invoices that you get, the design of a website, anything, the product itself is a part of the brand too. So anything that comes from that business, any communications that come from that business or product is technically part of the brand. And then everything else like marketing and all that is underneath the umbrella of the brand.
And marketing, what we have to kind of establish here is that there is a difference between marketing and branding. How would you distinguish that difference?
Yeah, I've had these conversations and everyone has a slightly different opinion about it. But how I see it is that marketing is under the umbrella of brand, because brand is like the character, the essence, the integrity of who the business is if it were a person. So marketing is that awareness portion of, okay, now that you have a brand and you have something of substance and you have something to say, how are you going to get it out there and get it in front of people? And that's the awareness portion. So marketing is all about getting people to know that the business even exists and that it could serve them and solve their problem or help them get to a certain goal.
And then if you were going to suggest something to a company, especially at this moment in time, would you say it's better to get your branding right first and then your marketing, or the opposite way around so you can make money first?
That's a really hard question for me to answer. Because it's all dependent on the business and who they're serving. Because some people, I would say, you need to go out and validate your product or service. Like, don't even think about marketing. Don't even think about brand. You need to go and see if this is even viable, if people even care about it. So I think it depends on where's this business at, what are they currently struggling with, and what are their goals. And then I would see, okay, what should we attack first? And if they're already established and they do have a product or service that does connect, then if there's no problems, if they haven't had any problems with branding or losing relationship connection than possibly marketing. But we look at branding. What are the things that branding can do? It can help you get more customers over a longer period of time at a premium price. So if you're struggling in any one of those three areas, I would say that's a time to consider branding. But if you're just at that place where just nobody knows about us, just once they know about us, that'll be fine. That's a different story, and that's more of like a marketing conversation. But those three things are really valuable to be thinking about if you're thinking about branding, is more customers over a longer period of time at a premium price. That's from Marty Neumeier, who's like the father of branding.
Excellent. And because I think that it is such a quagmire for a lot of startups in particular, that, like you said, it's about getting your MVP out and not spending months and months and months working with consultants on branding and what your identity is and blah, blah, blah. And then you get there and then no one wants to buy your product. And then it's like, what was the whole point in the first place? But at the same time, you always have to look at, will somebody want to identify with me? Like you said, are you going to have done that matchmaking process early enough so that you do get the ideal customers that you want? And then if we think about the fact that it means you're going to go out and find your customers through your brand, what kind of brands would you say have really resonated and done a good job of that? That people would have heard of versus the ones that haven't done a good job?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm looking down right now at my phone, and the first thing I think of Apple. It's Apple. I know everyone hears that all the time, but it's true. I mean, it's something that people, even though it might be inferior in some areas with product, their fan base is so loyal that they wouldn't go to another product at all because they don't want to be seen with it. I know designers joke about this all the time. For like, oh, you're working on a PC. Like, are you even a designer? Like, so it's becoming synonymous with certain industries too, which is really interesting and a part of a tribe. Like, you feel like you're a part of a tribe once you buy this product or you buy into this brand. So I think it's so interesting to even see my own actions when I go to purchase Apple. So I think they've done a really good job. One that hasn't done a good job, I would say anywhere that's like selling things that are commodity, that I'm thinking a lot of those drop shipping sites or businesses that really they're just about the commodity. They're just about the product, and there's no real reason why I should buy into your purpose or why you do what you do or the change you're trying to make in the world. It feels like they just want to make some money, which isn't a bad thing, but that doesn't necessarily create that emotional connection with me. I might just purchase it because, oh, I ran out of this thing, but I don't care if 10 other businesses, I'll buy it from 10 other businesses. It doesn't have to be this one. So I think those I would say that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Yeah.
I mean, in the events industry, for example, like we do travel and events for like groups, and sometimes you look at, right, what could we do to distinguish ourselves from our competitors? Because a lot of it, a lot of us use the same suppliers. A lot of us do the same events. So what would make us different, and how is our brand going to resonate? And like you said, how do we create that tribe around what we're doing? So that people continuously want to come back and people refer us. What advice would you give to people in the events industry in particular right now who are having a bit of a tough time?
Yeah, I think you bring up something so important about finding what makes you unique, because it doesn't have to be just the product that you deliver. And I think some people make the mistake that they think that their product or service has to be so different from everyone else's for them to even stand out. And that's not the case. You can be different in what you believe in and why you do what you do. You could be different in how you serve your customers. Maybe there's the way in which you do or you put on that event is extremely special. I'm not sure. Maybe it's how you treat your vendors. There's so many different ways that you could inject that personality that feels like anytime that someone is interacting with your business, they feel like they're interacting with a person, even if it's automated, even if it's through automated emails, even if it's them getting an invoice from you or going to your website, that they feel this emotional connection. There's a way to do that. And it's really to look at who are the humans behind the business and what makes them unique? And then how can you inject that into the events business that you have? And if you do that, you're going to see that all the businesses, even though they do something very similar, they're going to start looking and acting differently just because there's like a humanity behind it. It's a real something behind it that feels less automated. It feels less cold. And it's a reflection of how different we all are as people too. So if we build a brand based off of people's personalities, then that starts to shine through the business, and people can sense that. And then they'll gravitate towards the businesses that they feel align with them more than others. And
I'm trying to dig a little bit deeper into this. What would be an example of showing that there is a human element behind a business?
I have two. One I'm vaguely remembering, but one is, I believe it was Zappos. I don't know if you've heard much about Zappos and how they run business and whatnot, but they will go to great lengths to serve, especially in the customer service department, serve their customers well. Like one story, and I'm going to get this totally wrong, but they had sent the wrong shoes to someone. I don't know if it was for a wedding, but the customer service rep ended up getting on a plane and delivering the right ones, hand delivering the right ones to the customer. So something like that, where we think, oh, the call is just going to go to a call center and it's going to have a number and you're going to take a long time to even talk to somebody. Like that's what we think of when we think of customer service. But then something like someplace like Zappos has that human connection. And that is massive. Even though it's a big company, they're serving so many people. They give a lot of liberty to their customer service reps to serve that customer and delight them. They go above and beyond the call of duty for customer service. And then I've also seen on a smaller scale, if you're even doing just automated emails, there was an automated email and I cannot remember what it was from, but it made me laugh. I bought something really it wasn't exciting. The product was not exciting at all. When I got the automated email of thank you so much for purchasing the product, it was really funny. Just the messaging in it was as if I got it from someone, and just the way in which they wrote it, I was like, oh, that's really delightful. I didn't expect that in the thank you for purchasing the product email, I would be delighted. So it's injecting these areas or these times of delight for your customer that are unexpected. And that's why I mentioned invoicing, because you could even, I just imagine that you could just change the messaging on your invoice that the automated invoice email that we see is just so boring. Like how could you grab someone's attention and put a smile on their face, even with something as boring and not that delightful as an invoice?
No, definitely. There's a great email, no, actually it's a letter from a company called CD Baby. I don't know if you've heard of them. And this is going back quite a few years, and it went viral because the way they wrote the letter about every CD that was purchased, I just recommend everyone who's listening or watching this to Google CD Baby's letter that they sent with every CD. And that made the company go viral because of the care and attention. And the guy who wrote it said he spent 20 minutes on it, but thought about it for like 20 minutes. But that made a difference to his business. And it's crazy, isn't it? Like to think that you spend all this money on your infrastructure, your fancy automations, but one little thing like that could make the difference to making a customer remember you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I know that I bought an example of a product I bought a bed frame. Usually not that exciting, but for one, the product I really like, but two, when I got it, the packaging was beautiful. It was very unexpected that a bed frame would come in such beautiful packaging. Then the instructions were well designed. And then they had in there a card that a door hanger that you put on your door, like a text would be better. So to get people to not come into your room, but something like that. And there was a note in there too. And it was so beautiful. And I thought, as a designer too, mean, you're speaking my language. It's as if you know that I would like something like this. And there's that kind of a connection too, where your aesthetics also, if they align and you have similar taste as a business, then you will also feel that connection. It's the same idea as our clothing, that we go to certain stores because it reflects our taste that we have, and then we feel that level of connection.
Definitely. Moving back a little bit to how you kind of pivoted, you've said somewhere that you went from being an order taker to, let me just quote this right, you went from an order taker to being paid to think. What does that mean?
Yeah, when I think of order taker, like I had mentioned to you earlier, it's like going to a restaurant and they just ask you, what do you want to eat? And you just tell them exactly how you want your order. And that's what, like I had mentioned, I felt like as a designer, that the people who were asking me to design things, hiring me to design things, had a list of requirements for me. And it was mindless at that point. I didn't feel like I was getting paid for my creative problem solving. And so when I say getting paid to think, it's using all that creative energy and the creative problem solving, that the reason why I got into this business in the first place, that I felt like I couldn't use as an order taker, as the person that was just the hands on the project being told what to do. And I wanted to help designers see that there is something else out there that they can actually use their creative problem solving skills, and that they don't have to go through years of turmoil and depression really in their careers because of it.
Given that there's going to be a lot of people now who have maybe lost their jobs, maybe having to think about pivoting, what would you advise people to do if they wanted to get paid to think?
Yeah. I would say go out and listen. And I know it's very hard. It's so hard right now, especially for people if they've lost clients, if they've lost jobs. I understand that it can be that survival mode that they might feel, and anxiety of I don't even care, I need to put food on the table. But if they're able to slow down and listen and just talk to people around them, see what are they struggling with, what's on their minds, maybe go talk to certain types of people that you'd love to be your customers with no agenda. Just go in and talk to them, see what they're struggling with, see what's on their mind, what are their goals, and do you have any skill sets that you could use to help them solve their problem? And as you keep talking to people, you're going to start noticing patterns, especially if you talk to people in the same industry, or if you talk to a certain type of person with a certain mindset. You talk to multiple of them, you're going to start noticing patterns of what they say that they want or what they say they need. And then you can reflect and, like I said, look at your skill set and see if you can help them get over that problem, and then test out a product with them, make a minimum viable product, and go back to those people you talk to and say, hey, I created this thing to help you solve your problem. Would you be interested? And build it up that way. So that's what I would suggest doing. But it does start with connecting with people, to getting to know them, to getting to know what they want and what are they struggling with, and getting there.
Definitely. And, I was looking at this and thinking about it in the terms of the events industry, because in the events industry, clients ask companies to come up with a proposal for an event, and event companies, sometimes spend thousands of dollars putting together these pitch decks so they can then go and present to a potential customer, and still, be 1 in 10 companies that are going to pitch. And I thought, well, why can't you switch it round on the company and say to them, well, actually, we will come up with a great design and a great strategy for your event, but we want to get paid for our time. And ask the company to do that. And you never know, you might be respected a lot more for doing it, because I think, hey, these guys are actually going to be serious and take the time to really work with us on the design, give us the design, and then, hey, if you don't like working with us after that, then you can give that design to another event company and they can go deliver it.
Exactly. I love that you brought this up, because it's something that we talk a lot about in the design industry, but not necessarily in other industries. So it's interesting to hear you guys struggle with that too, because there's a book out by Blair Enns called Win Without Pitching. Because what you're talking about is spending a lot of time and money into putting together a proposal that may or may not get approved, And beyond that, you might be putting together a proposal where that might not exactly meet their needs either. And the idea behind this is, one, you're not in the proposal writing business. Like, that's not why we're in business, right? To just keep writing proposals and losing money on that. That's not what we do. So if we keep spending time on doing proposals, then we're wasting all that time where we could have been helping this company achieve their goals. The other thing is, you might be putting together a proposal that's not meeting their goals. So if you do take a step back and say, we'd love to work with you, however, we don't pitch for free and we don't do these proposals for free. We actually have a meeting where we sit down with you and we discuss your goals, discuss what that would entail for us to help you get there. And that might not even mean, like, if I were to give you a proposal right now, it might be 10 times the amount than you'll end up spending because we didn't plan first. So that also, it helps the company too, if you approach it that way as well. And then it doesn't waste their time, because then they're looking at tons of proposals and they're just going, that one doesn't fit. No, that's too expensive. And when you could have just been sitting down and say, what do we really need? What do we have to have? Do we really even need this thing? And how can we help you actually achieve what you're trying to do? So yeah, I highly suggest reading Win Without Pitching if you haven't yet.
Yeah, I definitely will. And another example of when I started thinking about this a little bit more was when you're getting a software product developed. The software development company will say, we want to do a discovery phase first. And they will charge you for that discovery phase. And the way that one of the software companies described this to me, they said, well, if you're getting a new house built, you would have an architect, first of all, do the designs, do all the plans, and then the builder would work off those designs. So it's exactly the same thing. And we don't think twice about it when we're getting a house built. We just say, all right, we know we have to pay the architect.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Why do you think you've become so popular since changing your approach from being a designer to a thinker? And what kind of steps did you take to kind of get that popularity?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I never think of it like that. Well, one, I do have to give credit to my coach, Christo, because I was on, and I still am from time to time, on the Futur on YouTube. So Christo has a channel that helps designers and creatives really get paid to do what they love. And I got connected with him, and he agreed to coach me for free if I would allow all of it to be recorded and shown to the public. And so I figured, sure, what do I have to lose? Because I was just unhappy. I was an unhappy designer, and I really needed his coaching, I felt. So I agreed to it. And I think that being vulnerable to the audience that could connect and relate to my story. And I mean, I got so many messages saying, I am feeling exactly what you are feeling. You asked the questions that I wanted to ask him. And I think me just being vulnerable with my process of learning, because my entire growth and journey has been public. And people love that. It's like a reality TV show that they can see what happens. And it's not always pretty. I mean, I went 4 months without clients when I first started getting coached by him, because I was starting to say no to lower budget clients, and I was aiming for higher ones, but I didn't really know how to do that. And I was really bad at marketing. And people saw that, and they saw that it wasn't a perfect journey. And I think they were craving someone that just says the truth. Like, this is really hard. Didn't come easy to me. Here's the steps that I did. And I was just learning, they say learning out loud. I was learning in the public eye. And I think that's really what it came from, is that I was okay making a fool of myself on some episodes. But you know, that ever since I did that, and I can draw back from stories and insights that I learned from there and use it for my marketing now, then it just keeps feeding itself and keeps growing from there.
And I think it's something that I remember Gary Vaynerchuk would always talk about. Just post your journey on social media. Post the fact you're making mistakes. Post your designs that you're doing for your new website. And sometimes as a entrepreneur, like you said, you feel a little bit nervous about doing that, because people are going to maybe think that those designs are terrible and they're never going to want to use you. But at the same time, people love a story. I mean, what were some of the examples of things that people really liked about, some of the mistakes you made?
Yeah. Well, they loved when I would screw up doing role plays, because Chris would act like a client, or I would act like a client, and we would go through this role play, and I would always break character because there was something that he said that I felt my clients would never say that. And he hated when I broke character. And he's like, you have to stay in character. And I think just the entertainment value of seeing someone struggle like that, it was just real. It was real life. And that's especially, people will email me later and be like, oh, I know you don't like role plays. So that was one in particular.
That's great. And I'm really glad that you're really honest about it as well, because again, a lot of entrepreneurs don't like to be honest about the fact that they've made mistakes along the way. They like to just come out all of a sudden and say, hey, you need to use my service because I'm so great. And that's not real life. It doesn't happen. I've made hundreds of mistakes over the years, and looking back, I think it would have been a great story if I'd just recorded some of them. And I think that will be something that I'll look at doing based on this conversation going forward. And just a couple of final questions. Again, looking at the situation that we're in now, what advice would you give to someone who at the moment might not have a lot of resources or cash? If they're starting a brand, what kind of 2 or 3 things would you advise them to do to get the kind of maximum output with a minimum cash investment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say really it starts first with your product or service. And going back to the idea of validating, running a beta test, any of that, you can do, depending on what the service and product is, you can do that really cheap. And you can even sell things before you have a brand, before you're doing marketing, and you can just go to individuals and talk to them about what is your problem? What are you dealing with? How can I help you? And then create an MVP out of it. And if you want to know more, I believe there's an episode on Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn. Episode, I want to say 46, about creating a product with little to no budget. So the title is something like that. And it's about going out and finding out what people's problems are and then creating a product based off of pre-selling the product. So you go out, you say, this is what it's going to be like. I need to build it. And if you're interested, it'll be X amount, and you get people to purchase it before it's even built. And I've done this before as well with e-courses. So I sold 24 spots to an e-course before because I didn't know if anyone was going to be interested. So I pre-sold it. Once I had all the spots filled, I had to make it. So I made it while I was delivering it out to the students. So each week I said it's going to be a 5-week course, and I made it the week before. So each week I made the week before, and it was great because I was able to validate that someone was willing to purchase it based off of the outline. I sent it in a Google Drive, just a sheet, and I put the outline on it, and I said, this is what it's going to be. Can I get some feedback? If they said they were interested, and I fixed some things based on their questions and feedback, they said they were interested, I sent them a pre-sell link. And I said, great, I'm going to be building it. It's going to start at this date. If you'd like to, you can sign up and pay for it now. So I would suggest doing as much as you can where you pre-sell, where you validate, where you talk to people, and don't don't invest that much time or money into something that you don't know it's going to take off, and start there. And don't even worry about brand identity, marketing. Don't even worry about that yet.
And courses and selling courses online and becoming like a leader or an authority figure, I think that is something that is definitely going to grow, especially post-COVID, because people, as my good friend Svetlin Todd always says, look for leaders. How do you brand yourself as a leader and then put together a course? Because anyone can say I can write a course, but you need to have something that is going to be valuable for the people that you're serving.
Yeah, and that gets into audience building, and that gets into more marketing. So I would go study, honestly. Go study people who already do have an audience. Why do they have an audience? What are they putting out that people are attracted to? And I understand that as someone gets more popular, they tend to broaden what they talk about, and then they start talking about how to have a better life and how to be motivated and all that, and it deviates from where they first started. But I would say go and study some people that you really admire. Where did they start? How did they get their start? What helped them get traction? Because building an audience There's an art form to that. And I know mine came from me sharing my story and me getting on someone else's platform and that their audience seeing me. So when I tell people to start building an audience, especially as a thought leader, I say, go where people are already listening. Go on other people's podcasts. You can actually request to be on podcasts. Now, not all of them will accept you, but there's a bunch that will. So if you just get a list of podcasts in your industry and go talk to people and see if you can get on there, or if you have even one friend that knows someone that has a podcast, or if your one friend does have a podcast, see if you can get on there. Once you do, ask that host, is there anyone else that you could refer me to that I could be on their podcast, and start tapping into other people's audiences and giving value to them. You can do guest blogging as well. So you're giving value to someone else's audience that they already built the audience. So that's the first place I would say to go and give value there. And then as your story starts resonating with people or what you have to say, they're going to start coming to you and start following you on your own platform.
And then when you built the course, how did you go about doing that? Was it just based on your own research and experience? Or did you have to go and do a bunch of other research yourself about the topics?
I had enough traffic to my website because I was starting to talk a lot about brand strategy, and I had an email list I was building. I had a blog, and then I had an Instagram that people were coming to. And so I looked at what were the top posts from my Instagram, what are the top blog posts that people are visiting, what emails are people opening or responding to the most, and they all, without a doubt, were all how to be a brand strategist. What can I do to be a brand strategist? I put surveys out as well to ask my audience. Once I had a really good idea of what I should build, then I went into the validation process of, okay, now that I know people are interested, I'm going to start picking people that are highly engaged in my email list and sending them an individual email asking them, can you look over this outline? It's a course I'm going to make. You might be interested. While you're at it, can I get your feedback? And I went from there.
Melinda, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And you've mentioned a couple of books and YouTube channels to check out. Is there any other books that you'd recommend people to read, especially thinking about branding in business?
Yeah, I would say anything by Seth Godin. Talks a lot about marketing. Seth's great. If you guys haven't read The E-Myth yet, it's really good for business. I'm trying to think of anyone else. One book I'm reading right now, and it's not necessarily business oriented, is called Mindset. And it's about the fixed versus growth mindset, but it's really helping me though in how I run my business. And
what about YouTube channels apart from your own?
The Futur, definitely The Futur. And I think that's really the only one that I can think of at this moment.
Excellent. And just finally, anything else that you want to say before we kind of wrap up, or maybe share like your Instagram page or YouTube channel, the details for that?
Yeah, I have, you guys can follow me on Instagram, Melinda Livsey, and then my website is marksandmaker.com, and I'm on Twitter as well, LinkedIn, and I'm a co-host on The Futur.
Brilliant. Melinda, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you can enjoy the rest of your day in sunny California. And I'll definitely put all the details in the show notes. And thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's great meeting you.
Brilliant. Thank you for listening and watching. If you've got any suggestions or any feedback, then feel free to get me on Twitter at GurmejSP or Insta at events_Gurmej, spelled Gurmej. Thank you for listening. Catch you soon.